Some players, certainly in the past, have struggled to play in front of the crowds that we have. The bus pulls up and they see Valley Parade and think, oh yeah, quite look forward to this. And you sense sometimes that they have a rest for 3 or 4 weeks and then build up to play really well against us. So I might be paranoid about that, probably am.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the League of 72. I am here with Mark Hughes, the Bradford City manager. I asked you guys on Twitter what you wanted me to ask you, Mark. And you said just before we started recording there, what we're talking about. We're definitely not talking about me. But one thing I just want to get it out the way, put it to the side, because I didn't know this about you. Is there something going on with your calf muscles? Someone tweeted saying, who has got bigger calf muscles, you or Jack Grealish? Is that a thing? Don't worry.
Well, I would have gone up against. I would have gone against him maybe 25 years ago, but at the moment I'm a little bit longer in the tooth. So
was that
any musculature I had in the past is long gone, unfortunately. So I can't compare because they are magnificent calves he's got.
He does. Yeah, he said he didn't work on them. Was that a thing that you were known for?
More my thighs apparently.
Right.
I would have thought, but I suppose they're all linked.
So you've obviously got great legs, Mike.
Well, back in the day, maybe not anymore.
Okay, well, that's all right. We'll give it to you, shall we? We'll say the answer is Mark Hughes. I want to take you back to a date. I just think it's really interesting because we're talking about sort of your. I was thinking about your USPs as a player and a manager. I know a lot of people think about you as a manager, as a legend, as a legend of the game. The other USP was the volleys. We've just been out there doing it with the guys now, and obviously it looks harder than it did for yourself. But I do want to go to this date. It's the 9th of June, 1999. Can you remember what that date is?
June 1999?
Yes.
I was on a beach, surely. That was pre-season, wasn't it?
So I've got here, this is Denmark 2, Wales 0. Have I got the date right?
Right, go on, remind me.
So that's your first game as manager of Wales?
Yes, it was actually.
24 years ago.
Me and Big Nev.
Yes.
Yeah, we just come off the back of a 4-0 defeat in Italy. I think it was a double header, and Bobby Gould decided to resign and, in his wisdom, recommended myself and Big Nev take the game on the Wednesday, which obviously was news to me and hadn't been preempted beforehand. We weren't told, well, if we lose tonight, I'm going to resign and you're in. So it was a bit of a shock, to say the least. So we had a couple of days, once we got back, we actually played at Anfield. So there's a lot of organisation leading into the game.
Does that make it more stressful when it's Anfield? When it's not your ground, is it, I guess,
no, well,
as a player?
That's how it was in those days. Welsh FA had to maximise the profit out of the big games, and that's what they deemed was the right thing to do. I didn't really agree with it because I always felt we should play, certainly in Wales at least, and maybe Wrexham because that was my favourite ground. But so we had the game to prepare for, and I actually played in the game as well as co-managed, I suppose, was the role. So I think the game itself wasn't too memorable, probably apart from Big Nev's black suit, because
I saw the suit. Yeah.
I'd never seen him in a suit up to that point.
All black.
Yeah, he looked very smart.
I'd
never seen him in a suit before or after.
When I get the opportunities to sort of meet people like yourself, I always kind of think, what's the question I would want to ask? And even if it doesn't totally fit, I'm going to ask it anyway. Neville Southall, as a manager, I never sort of saw that or knew about that. What was he like, even in that small little moment?
I never had the respect of the dressing room, obviously. I mean, he was a big character. He wasn't... he had a strange sense of humour, I would suggest. He was a little bit... he put you on your toes now and again, but... I could understand the thinking behind it. He was one of the senior players like myself. So, and he's managed since, albeit not at a high level, but... you could see the traits that he had that would lend itself to it.
So that's nearly 24 years ago now. Does it feel 24 years ago?
It doesn't feel that long ago, obviously, no. My playing career is a distant memory for most, but not for myself. I think I've got quite a bit of recall of most games, not all of them, but probably only the good ones, which is good. Once you retire, people seem to remember more of your good games than your bad ones, so that's a good thing of return.
So there were a lot of tweets about the goals in 1991, the Cup Winners' Cup final as well. Yeah. Do you feel like you've changed much from that person on that day?
Yeah, you have to. Obviously, I've been a manager a long time now as well, and I've always said playing is the best thing. Playing is the best thing you can ever do, and I was fortunate to play at a good level with good players and have good moments and win trophies. And management is very similar in terms of the emotion that it generates, but it doesn't beat playing. So it's the next best thing, but it doesn't beat playing.
And so, because I think also that I'm always interested in how you are as a player and then how you are as a manager. Do you think those two are quite similar throughout your career, or different? And
no,
why?
I was as a player, I was quite aggressive. I don't think I'm really aggressive as a manager. I'm probably quite even.
Did that surprise you? Because I guess you only see it as it happens.
I suppose that's, you can't be what you're not. I think as a player, when I got on the pitch, I was able to express myself a little bit better, or more forcibly than I did maybe off the field. As a manager, it's different. You've got to be front of house, so you've got to be out there. So you do change to a certain extent, but yeah, I think it's more to do with your innate personality, how you are as a guy. Don't try and change it too much, because players smell that anyway. So don't try and be something that you aren't, because then you come over as false, and your credibility goes down the pan. So you just got to be what you are, and how you pitch your message. Over the years, obviously with the experience I've had, you get to understand the best way to do certain things in terms of your role as a manager, and that comes from experience.
So you're 1 year in the job now at Bradford City, and things are, and we're going to talk about kind of the team and how they're getting on. It's a very interesting time with a key sort of set of games coming up, and you're in a solid place in the league as well. The role of manager of Bradford City, has that been what you expected one year into it, as you reflect on it?
It's a big role at this level, and I think probably my experience of managing at a higher level has helped me in that regard. I think this is a big role for a manager to undertake, and because there's expectation and there's pressure, and we play in front of huge crowds at Valley Parade, and you have to be able to deal with it. That's part of it, and sometimes that expectation is difficult to deal with, and I think the fact that I've experienced that at other clubs helps me in that regard. So I think we're in a position now where, and I said at the beginning of the season, we wanted to do really well this year and get in a position where we could challenge at the top, and that's what we're doing. So expectation-wise, straight from the off, we're raised anyway, and I've not done anything to really quell them, because I think people wouldn't expect me to, if I'm honest, because they expect that, given what we've tried to do here, they expect us to be pushing for those automatics if we can. We're still in the mix for that, so that's at the moment we're where we hoped we would be, albeit you can look back at some games and think, yeah, we should have won that, or we should have made that draw into win and losses into wins, but for the most part we've ticked off almost every metric from last year. We've bettered this year, so it shows that we've had a big improvement from the time since I've come in.
I interviewed Chris Wilder, and I asked him about that sort of step up to the Premier League, and he was saying he didn't realise the intensity of it. For you in your career, so many games of management in the Premier League, and then this first job outside of it. For you, was it kind of the opposite? Did you realise that sort of goldfish bowl that is the Premier League and the intensity of it? And have you felt any difference here?
No, not really. I think the games themselves on a Saturday, come match day, when the whistle goes, there's intensity and there's anticipation for the game itself. I think maybe what Chris was talking about is what surrounds the game at Premier League level, and all the demands on you as a manager. I mean, it's almost daily. There's either one-to-ones you have to do. More often it's you guys that, that create the demand on the manager, but certainly I don't get anything like that at this level, which is a godsend, if I'm honest. That's the part of it that I've quite enjoyed, because I think you get to a point sometimes at Premier League level where that demand on you to say the same things, and you've got a message you want to get out there, but instead of just saying it once, you have to say it 10 times to overseas partners, to different broadcasters, to radio. So it's a little bit too much, but I would imagine that's what he's talking about.
Yes, yeah, no, he certainly was.
Along with the challenge of going up against some of the best teams in the world.
Yeah, but I think it's really interesting that it makes sense to me when you come to Bradford City, which is such a huge club, you know, with the attendances that you guys have. For someone else, that this job might feel too big, but I'm not saying it's too small for you, but you feel you can acclimatise to it very easily because you've had that kind of intensity.
It's what I'm used to, so I feel it's a good fit. So I mean, I can't speak for anybody else who's been here before or whatever, but for me, it's the norm. So it doesn't really faze me. It's something I've experienced before, and the game itself will always test you. There's a lot of good players at this level, which actually is the one thing that has surprised me. So credit to the league. It's a better league than I actually give it credit for. I was looking from afar and probably didn't give it the credit that it deserved. But having worked here for a year, I've got great respect for the amount of ability that the league generates.
Do you feel like there's a bit of a calmness there because of your standing in the game coming here as well? Because there was an interview I thought was really interesting that you said that when you left Man United and you went to Chelsea, you realised your status in the game. And when you started talking to some of the younger players, they went, you know, they're hanging on your absolute every
I remember
word.
saying that.
And I'm not saying that wasn't happening in the Premier League, but you know, you're obviously a legend of the game. So to come to League Two, have you felt that same kind of refreshment?
Maybe to a greater or lesser extent. I think I was surprised when I turned up here. I think if you asked the guys themselves, the players, that they weren't expecting me to walk through the door. And
could you feel that when you walked through that?
Yeah, a little bit. And I probably wasn't expecting myself, but I just thought it was a real opportunity. I wanted to get back in, and I was ready to go, and it was stars aligned. I was ready to get back in. Bradford asked me, so I said yes. So it was as simple as that, really. So I've not regretted it. I've really enjoyed it. I wanted to be honest with everybody, and I didn't actually tell the chief executive at the time, but I did say to myself that if I felt I didn't have the energy to do it again, then I would have been honest, and after 2-3 weeks or however long it took, I would have gone to him and said, listen, it's not right, I'm probably done and I'm going to walk away. So just to be honest with the club, but here I am, 12 months or so down the line, I'm still here, so I've still got that energy.
Do you think that you will have surprised that group of players with anything, you know, because they would have gone, Mark Hughes coming through the door? Do you think there's anything that they would be surprised by from you over this year?
I have no idea. You'd have to ask them. We've obviously changed the way that they've probably approached the game at this level.
How so?
Just by virtue of the way we play. We want to play, get the ball down, and we try and lessen the amount of transitions in the play and take out more of the risk, in my view. It's difficult when you're playing against teams that are a lot more direct than you. You can have a lot of the play, and then it takes just one long ball, one mistake, an individual error, and you concede and lose the game. And that happens quite regularly at this level. So you've got to be brave, and we are brave in possession. We're prepared to get on the ball and try and play the way we feel will be successful, which it has up to a point. But a lot of teams don't play that way, and we'll take the risk out of the game and hope for chances, even if they're few and far between. That's not how I've played the game as a player or as a manager. So we have changed in that regard. We're the team that's usually more dominant in games, and wants to get on the front foot, and is usually the team that's pressing to create chances. unfortunately on occasion we get caught going the other way and we suffer. But we all feel, players, staff, everybody, we all feel it's the right way to play.
I do want to talk about that a little bit more, but just before that, if you will forgive me, just because I think your experience, your CV for a League Two manager, if I can say, is obviously unbelievable in the amount of games that you've played. And there's some huge teams here, and I know that people will be watching this who are Bradford fans, but they'll also be fans of a lot of different clubs. And I think it's just always an opportunity to hear what your experiences were. Don't need to go into huge detail, but I'd just love to know what the top line thought that pops into your head when you think of these different teams that you managed in terms of what you learned. So starting off with Wales, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of what you learned when you were there at that time?
Well, the big thing when you're a kid, I can only go by myself, but I knew lots of, obviously, my contemporaries and guys I was in school with. Whenever we were kicking a ball on a school playing field or wherever, then you're always in the back of your mind, you want to be a footballer and you wanted to be a professional, you wanted to play for your country and you wanted to win the FA Cup. Those are the three things. It's a little bit different now. It was probably they want a big house and a flash car. So priorities might have changed somewhat, but just being a Welsh international was something to aspire to, and I was able to do it as a schoolboy, which was a really big thing for me at the time, clearly. And being able to wear a Welsh shirt when I was 14, whatever it was, 14, 15, was really special, and that never changed throughout my career. Obviously, I played at all levels for the Welsh national team, and every time I put the shirt on, I was really proud.
But so, as a manager, what did you learn in that such a
as a manager, moment? Yeah, as a manager, I wasn't ready. It's the honest answer, because I'd gone from playing to, well, I was still playing when I first got the job with Neville, and then I had 2 games as provisional manager while they had a look, see if I was up to the job, and then I got it for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years after that. But really, I was learning on the job. I was still playing, as I said, and I feel you can understand why players go from playing to management and failing, because you don't really, at that point, you know your role I was a centre forward, so I knew that like the back of my hand. I knew every aspect of it, every angle of it, in my view, but I didn't know how it related to other players. I didn't know what was expected of full-backs in relation to centre halves, so I had to relearn all that, and it was only because I was protected by good staff, certainly in the initial years, that they protected me somewhat. I knew what I wanted to be put out in front of me when my Welsh team played, but all the stuff on the edges that I didn't really know occurred, because I was very much in the zone of still being a player, so I had to learn all that side of it. But it better prepared me, because you could, with international football, obviously you have an international week, you get exposed to all manner of stuff, the game itself, and then everybody just goes boom, and they go back to the clubs, and you sit in a darkened room and you think, goodness me, what the hell happened there? So you can either say, oh, I didn't enjoy that and get me out of here, or you can say, actually speak to yourself and say, I need to be better next time, and that's what I did. And every time I played an international, there's things I thought, on reflection, needed to do better. So that's how I had a view. Once I went into league management at Blackburn, I had a fair idea of where I wanted my teams to go in terms of how they approach the game. So that time as a Welsh team manager was invaluable for me.
It's funny, Gareth Ainsworth said the exact same thing in terms of his first job. He said that phrase, I wasn't ready, just wasn't ready. That's interesting. So Blackburn, you've had, I remember... Yeah,
I was ready to go into management there, and it's a really good club, fantastic club, great facilities. Clearly only a few years previous they'd been Premier League champions, so all the infrastructure was in place. Great chairman I was working with, John Williams, and the board as well, gave me huge support, and that was really important. When it's your first job, you've got to have that support. If you don't, then you're primed to fail, in my view. But had some really good times there. We had great years, got to FA Cup semi-finals a couple of times, League Cup semi-finals, made Europe by virtue of our league position on one occasion. So all
Is
in
there
all,
one-
really pleased with what we produced.
Is there one specific thing from that Blackburn time that you think was the learning of that job?
No, I think it was just the exposure to the game at that level and what the level was, because clearly you're going up against outstanding world-class players week in, week out, and you have to have a plan. It was very much like sometimes going up against top international teams. Wales would go up against, we played everybody, Italy, Brazil, Germany, everybody, and we had to have a plan. If we didn't have a plan, then we'd just get rolled over, and that's what the Premier League was like. So it made you conscientious in terms of how you approach games and how good your preparation was, because if you didn't get it right, you'd get turned over.
The next job was Man City, which a lot of stuff happened at Man City, so much change. What was the big learning during that period of time?
I really enjoyed it. Looking back on it, towards the end it wasn't that enjoyable, because no, I didn't either. So the job itself was really interesting, just because it was a time when there was a lot of change going on, as you could imagine, with the new ownership coming in, and there's a lot of people arriving and departing. And
did you like that? Did you hate it?
I didn't like that point, because clearly people were getting lined up for my departure, so everything was prepared for when I left. So that happened about 2 or 3 months before I actually did, so that was a bit uncomfortable.
Do you accept that, or do you kind of put it
in
a little box
to
the side?
Looking back, it was a big learning curve, and and I learned a lot from it, and maybe understood how change affects people in different ways, the good and the bad of that. So looking back, I wouldn't have missed it. It was a great experience. New ownership came in. I wasn't their guy, so I wasn't going to last too long, but I actually lasted about a year, so probably longer than I thought I was going to last initially. It's always difficult when there's a change of ownership. Almost inevitably the manager loses his job and they get their own guy in.
Next 2 jobs were in West London, Fulham and QPR. How do you reflect on that period of your career?
Yeah, I enjoyed both of them up to a point. Fulham, I was following Roy Hodgson, and he left a really strong squad team. They had good behaviours, good standards, and I just picked it up and went with it. We had a little bit of a struggle because we didn't have any strikers. We lost Bobby Zamora and a number of other players, so I didn't really get a striker back till January. So our form dipped off. So there was a little bit of pressure initially, but once we got the players that we needed back, we finished quite strongly. But I got to the end of the season, and my contract had a clause in it and it was agreed by myself and the club, and the clause was that there's one day in the calendar where if I wanted to leave, I could, or if they wanted to sack me, they could. It was on the same day. So
that's fascinating.
So the closer I got to this date, I just wanted to know that they were going to try and progress and obviously buy players. We had a lot of, it was quite an old team, Fulham, and there's some key players like our goalkeeper Schwarzer and lots of other Danny Murphy, really influential players in the group, but were coming to the end of their careers, and I knew they needed to be replaced, and I got the idea that maybe the owner obviously was looking to sell the club as well, so I just made the assumption that they weren't going to invest, and maybe it'd be best for me to leave on that day. I wanted to buy a striker, and that was quite slow to develop, so I took that as a message that it wasn't going to happen.
Right.
So I left, and then about 3 weeks later they bought a £10 million striker.
Really?
So maybe I should have held on for a little bit longer. But so that was a regret from my point of view, because it was a good club and it was a good situation. I just read the signs wrongly, unfortunately.
And QPR was obviously just a very hectic.
Yeah, well,
time.
QPR was difficult. Went in there, they were struggling a little bit in the Premier League, so they made the change. I went in there and we stayed up. I mean, we were part of arguably one of the most iconic Premier League games ever. And we were...
I was at that game.
Yeah, and we were a big part of it. We weren't just the support act, really, but we played a huge part in the events of the day. And in the end, obviously, Man City won the league, as everybody knows, but we actually stayed up as well on the same day. So, all in all, looking into the following season, we were looking ahead to it. We made too many changes too quickly. That was the truth of the matter. Too many players came in, too many players that needed to go. We couldn't get out of the club. So actually the dynamic in the group became difficult to manage. And there wasn't that togetherness that you need, and we couldn't manufacture it. And there's too many that hadn't had any empathy with the club, and too many that maybe had lost trust in probably myself and the club as a whole. So it was a difficult situation.
That's interesting, because I guess you can, the sort of flow of a squad, like you're talking about Fulham, it sounded like it was kind of coming to the end of a great team in its moment, and you need to evolve that one. QPR trying to go from this to this, and the sort of gap in between is tricky.
I took the view that QPR got to... Listen, we stayed up by the skin of our teeth, so the answer lies there, basically, because we weren't good enough to really sustain presence in the Premier League. So change had to come. I mean, there's always turnover at the end of the season anyway. The problem was we probably did it too quickly with maybe not enough real understanding of the key elements that we needed to ensure that we're correct. And I think the reason, because we tried to cram it all in a short space of time, is probably would have been better over a couple of windows. But the anxiety was that we needed to change quickly, and unfortunately it didn't work.
Stoke City, I did write, just because Bojan retired last week, there was so much love for him from the Stoke City fans. Of course, you sort of, when I've seen you talking about management and different teams and stuff like that, you use the word stardust sometimes. And with him, he kind of had that. I just wondered what your thoughts and feelings of Bojan, because again, in terms of evolving a team, you went into a team there that was established, but playing a very different kind of football, and you've done a similar thing with Bradford. But then you did bring in that little bit of stardust. This seems to be something that you really like to have in your teams. Yeah,
I just think you need that, certainly at the Premier League level. You need game changers, guys that just can create something out of nothing. Sometimes when you're struggling to have any foothold in the game, then you need one guy just to produce a little bit of magic and sprinkle that stardust over the game, and that can change a result and a performance for you. And Bojan was one of those types of players. Clearly, when he came to us, he'd been bouncing around Europe, never really felt comfortable. I mean, he'd been at top clubs, he'd been in Italy, he'd been at Ajax, and obviously his time at Barcelona, he was up to very recently. I think he was the youngest player to make his debut for them, and scored huge amount of goals during his youth career. And I just had the opportunity to speak to him, and just pitched Stoke to him. At times not an easy sell, I have to say, but
it's a windy old place.
But it's helped because they're in the Premier League. Premier League is a huge attraction to foreign players, and I think he just got it as soon as he came to the club. The fans absolutely loved him. The quality of the player that he produced just prior to his injury was really at a high level. And I think the football that we played at that time, I mean, goodness me, they even labelled it as Stoke Alone at one point, but not quite sure we got to that level. But on our day, we beat everybody. We beat Chelsea, Man City, Man United. So no one enjoyed playing against us. We were a different type of Stoke team from, obviously, Tony Pulis' time there. But for a while it lasted, and we had a good 4 years there, 3 top 10 finishes, which is great, really, given our budget and what we had to spend, and and acquire players with. So, yeah, it's as with all these things, it finishes sadly, and the season where we didn't quite get the balance right, because probably our model was we had a reasonable chunk of money to spend, but we had to get that right. So if we did spend 10, 15 million, which is probably the most I ever spent, we had to get that one right, and then we had to supplement that big signing with good loan deals. I mean, we had fantastic guys coming in on loan and did really well for us. And now and again, we just have to go around world markets and pick up mavericks and guys that were a bit flaky on the edges, and hope that they worked.
Which is tough, isn't it? Because that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
You know, but it's also when it goes wrong, people in hindsight go,
it could end in tears. Yeah. So, I mean, we got away with it for 3 years. We did it really well. Got the right characters, right loan deals, guys that found their form when they'd been struggling at previous clubs. So we did that for 3 years. The fourth year we didn't get it right, and that's why we struggled. You
spoke about that kind of that sadness of how it generally ends as a manager. So with Southampton being your last job before that break, and I've heard you say that kind of needed that break. Was that because of the kind of sadness of how it ended, or was it just it was a lot of management in a long period of time, or what was it?
Yeah, it was more about probably been competing at the level as a player and a manager for a long time, and had really a significant break up to that point. So after the Stoke came to an end, I did feel that was probably the natural time for me to have a break, but then the opportunity to go in at Southampton was one that I wanted to do. So I took it. Obviously, we were able to stay in the league. We only had 7-8 games, I think, towards the end of the season. So I got the job, and then 12 games later, I lost my role there. So, it was difficult. But at that time, I felt, well, at the end of Southampton, I think, well, now I need to take that break that maybe I should have taken after Stoke. But football's very fluid, very much a changing environment. So sometimes you have to go with your gut feeling, and if you think it's the right move or the right position for you, then you have to follow it.
Yeah, and that's kind of a great example of that is back here at Bradford City, where although you've had that break and COVID was a big part of that break, when it then happened, it sounded like it happened really, really quickly. You've been in the job a year now. Do you feel like this is your team? Do you think you've truly got your stamp on it? Have you seen it in patches? Like, how are you feeling about the team itself?
Yeah, I can have. It is my team. I mean, I brought about 17 players in, so there's not too many left from the ones I inherited. So yeah, I can't hide behind somebody else's team and say, well, they're not my players anymore. So no, I take full responsibility for that. I think we recruited really well. We've got a good group, that's really motivated to be successful this year, and that's what we're all pushing towards. We recruited well again in January. I felt got some guys that had real leadership about them.
Was that something you felt was missing a little?
Yeah, a little bit. We just needed to be a little bit more vocal in and around the dressing room, maybe, and on the pitch. I think we've addressed that. Like Sam Stubbs and Adam Clayton clearly have addressed that. So on top of the good group that we had initially, then we've added to it. So I think we're in a good place to complete this season, hopefully successfully.
Yeah. As we said right at the start, huge club for League Two. You look at the attendances, your average is 17,000. The next best is, I think, Swindon with 9,000. We were talking about the sort of the possession-based style that you guys have got, and you're trying to sort of change, not have too many transitions. Is that a different kind of leadership and bravery that is necessary? And the home form, you're sort of 12th in the league, but the away form, you're second top. Do you think that's been do you think the style of play that you want to play and the bravery that's needed for that, do you think that can sometimes be a difficult concoction with a big crowd?
Yeah, on occasion. Some players, certainly in the past, have struggled to play in front of the crowds that we have. And that was something we talked about in the summer in terms of the ones we wanted to bring to the club.
Did that feel quite noticeable straight away?
Well, yeah, it was talked about even before I recognised it myself. But in the past, that was levelled against some players that they couldn't handle it. And you've got to be brave enough to stick your chest out and go out and play. And we find people turn up and the bus pulls up and they see Valley Parade and think, oh yeah, they quite look forward to this. And it's a fixture in the calendar that, without a doubt, teams look at and think, oh yeah, we'll go there. And you sense sometimes that they have a rest for 3 or 4 weeks and then build up to play really well against us. So I might be paranoid about that, probably am. But
I just think that's the thing. I always call it cup final tax.
Yeah.
I think there's certain teams that this is a kind of cup final for you. And I think, coming and playing you guys away from home is certainly one of those.
So it is what it is, and we're a target to be shot at, and that's fine. We don't mind that. But a lot of teams come and without fail they'll say, well, that's the best we've played all year, and you think, oh, another one's come out and played the best they can. So we play at a level, and the opposition play at a level that if they want to take anything from us, and our own form's okay, we'd prefer more wins clearly, but it's okay. It's better than last year, even now. So we've improved it slightly, but we want to finish really strongly so that obviously our home form really dictates where we be.
Do you think that sort of the fans might be seeing it in the wrong lens sometimes, where they might be thinking, hurry up? I know I've seen that as a fan. There'll be fans around me. So I'm a QPR fan. Mark Warburton was our manager. We would pass and be patient, and my dad would be a nightmare because he couldn't cope with that. And I was kind of go, this is how we're playing. You have to kind of get used to it. And actually, the important word is control. Is that something that actually?
Yeah, I talk about that. It's about control, but it's about balance as well. And I think you have to get the balance right. We talk a lot about that. It's about, yes, we play when we can. We get the ball down and we move it quickly along the floor and try and have that control and restrict the opposition. You're not in danger if you're in possession of the ball. So the longer we've got the ball, then the harder it is for the opposition to score against us. But if you get the balance wrong, then it becomes a little pedantic. It's a bit slow and it's a bit laborious, and that's when the crowd gets a little bit anxious because you're playing in areas they don't really want you to be playing. So that's when the anxiety levels start to rise. So that's when you've got to be brave. You've got to be able to be brave on the ball and brave out of possession as well. So I get it, and sometimes we don't get the balance right, and we get a little bit of anxiety thrown our way, but we understand that. But we're trying to get the balance right, and for the most part we've done that.
You spoke about 17 players coming in. One player that was already here was Andy Cook, who, speaking of form, this guy he's got a bit of Mark Hughes about him, hasn't he, as well? I know he
scores more goals than I ever did. Don't worry about that.
22 at the time of recording, and I say that I need to say that because he's just been on fire. Do you want to take any of the plaudits for this? Have you made any tweaks? Like you said, you knew that position. You know that position.
No, the thing with Andy is just when he's on a roll like he is at the moment, you just got to manage that and try and maximise it. And when he's confident, when he's playing with a smile on his face, then he does things that even he doesn't understand what he's doing, and certainly I don't understand sometimes, but it ends up in the back of the net, and that's where he finds himself at this moment in time. There was a period where I felt he wasn't in that place. He was getting a little bit down on himself, and he's very much a confidence player, Andy, and I think maybe if I can take any credit, but people will say, well, maybe you shouldn't have taken him out. He just needed to stay in the team for longer. He would have scored more, but I felt it wasn't going to happen because he just needed to be taken out just to regroup, and I took him out for about 4 or 5 games, I think, and he's come back even stronger. So I think he was just managing his emotional level, and once he starts overthinking his play rather than being the natural finisher that he is, then his confidence gets affected. But he's on a real high at the moment, so he's looking like scoring every game he plays. Yeah,
and you're right. Some of the goals, you're like, oof. Sort of the little dinks and finishes and the dribbling as well. A lot of things that you maybe wouldn't have expected to have seen from him. It's been very impressive. that tweet that I put out, a lot of Bradford City fans talking about kind of contracts and things like that, and it's in particular Andy Cook. Is that? I mean, I could throw the question at you about contracts, but one, you'd easily dodge it. Secondly, you don't know what division you're going to be in. Is that the big thing in these kind of things?
That was my dodge.
Right, that was your dodge. Fair enough.
No, it's true. I mean, we don't know. And listen, Andy's done everything in his power to get a new contract, and why wouldn't we be speaking to him? I mean, that's got to happen. That's a given. So I don't think there's any worries in that. Okay. I think the nature of this league and how, which is what I've found in terms of contract negotiations, almost everybody leaves it right to the end. People are on 12-month contracts, and that seems to be the norm at this level. Right. So I think the expectation is that we sit down with a number of the players and obviously go through what we can offer, and hopefully we get to a point where everybody's happy.
Last couple from me. First of all, Vincent Kompany, I know, is a player that you obviously signed. I've heard you talk about his leadership as a player. Are you surprised, impressed? You know, he's playing possession-based football. Everyone says that's about Pep Guardiola. I'm not so sure, Mark. I think that might have been you at some stage. Maybe that was it. Are you surprised by his
I'm not
shine and change to do a 180 with the club?
I'm not surprised how well he's done as a manager. He's just a very impressive guy. When I sat down with him just to pitch Man City to him, which wasn't the Man City that obviously Pep gets to pitch to players. It was a different animal there, and we were at a different level. But he just got it. Talking to him, I just saw that he thought, yeah, I like the sound of that and the challenge of that, and he was magnificent for the time I was there. So yeah, I'm really pleased for him. He's had an outstanding career. I'm not taking any credit for anything other than maybe just giving him the opportunity to come to the Premier League, and I think everybody's grateful for that. But he's done it the right way. He's obviously cut his teeth in Belgium, and I think that the years he had at Anderlecht obviously helped him, and it's that learning period that he's needed to have. So now he's ready to come back into British football, and it's only a matter of time before he's in the Premier League.
And with the run-in occurring now, what's your message to Bradford City fans who will be nervous, excited and all those things?
Well, all those emotions and great joy, we hope, because that's the emotion, the real emotion that we want to generate. We want to get to a point where we have a real opportunity to go up automatically if we can, and see where that takes us. We're a club that demands to be in a higher league. We're not being boastful about that. I think everybody acknowledges that, and it's my job to try and get us there. And we're all pushing in the right direction. We've got a great chance. It's the first real run at it that we've had since we've been in this league during this period. So we're going to give it our best shot.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mark.
No problem.
Thank you so much.